Alright, so this will be a very specific type of review. First, I'm an old fart, so my view and thoughts on Pokemon will surely be different than many other reviews you find out there. Second, I haven't played a mainline Pokemon game since Pokemon Y back in 2013, and even then I wasn't a huge fan of the game. In fact, I'm not even entirely sure I ever completed the story in it. Anyway, I went into Pokemon Sword and Shield. I picked up Sword, so I will be referencing that version of the game from here on out, by the way. The same as everyone else, seeing all the controversy surrounding each bit of new information the Pokemon Company would reveal. I tried my absolute best to go into the game without any type of bias, though that was a bit tough. From all that I had seen, the game looked like butt. It seemed to have performance issues, and the internet connectivity was yet to be proven to work well. Now that I've had my hands on the game for well over 25 hours, I've been slowly working my way to catch them all, and I've been trying my hand at post-game content. The result is, well, it surprised me, honestly. So like I brought up just a minute ago, I can confirm that this game looks like butt. Which is really odd because I like the art style, I love many of the actual Pokemon designs, and there are some really neat details throughout the game, but it just doesn't look the greatest. I think the bigger issue might be consistency here. For example, I'd be walking through an area of the game that actually looked quite gorgeous. There'd be bright yellow dried grass juxtaposed by rich blue skies and lush green hills off in the distance with cloud shadows lazily drifting over the landscape. Then I'd enter the next area and be thrown into what looked like a PS2 game. On top of this, the battle animations are just bad. It's weird because sometimes they are actually really neat, but most of the time it just looks like it's cheap and outdated. This whole aspect of Pokemon Sword is just so weird. I'm pretty certain this game should have had a bit more time to have the developers work on it, but I am not a developer, so I won't go further into that aspect. One of the biggest reasons I almost passed on Pokemon Sword were the performance issues I had seen beforehand. The only time I had any performance issues were in very specific situations. I would be in the wild area and I'd turn on the internet communications. Now, they weren't game-breaking, but they were noticeable enough to be an annoyance. Otherwise, I didn't really have any performance issues throughout my experience. Through all of this, however, I absolutely loved the art style and the designs throughout. That moment I mentioned where things looked gorgeous, those actually stick in my mind more than the bad stuff. The Pokemon designs are freaking great, the visual style fits the series very well, and there are a lot of neat details that are outstanding. Again, this further pushes that weird inconsistency I mentioned before. Though the battle animations are terrible, the animations while Pokemon are out in the wild, like in the wild area, are so cool. They all react differently when they see you, and they're animated very well. It is just baffling to see these types of differences in quality within the same game. And speaking of the wild area, I wanted to touch on that because that is both the most awesome and most perplexing area of the game. The wild area is fun. It's great. I hope that the Pokemon series goes more this way in the future, but it's still kind of small. It does have its limits, and just that inconsistency again all throughout. But I still love it. It's just really weird. And if you don't know what the wild area is, if you've somehow been able to get out of all the controversy and avoid it all, it's basically a giant area where you see Pokemon running wild, and just like the rest of the game, you can either see them, or if you run through grass, there are random encounters, but you can still kind of choose to go into them if you like. And you go through this wild area, and there's all sorts of things going on. There's weather conditions, there's different locales, there's different events going on at different times, there are raids to go to. You can see other people who are online when you connect online. You can see them riding around on their bikes. You can pick up ingredients for your curry and so on and so forth. It's a really, really cool area. It's a good addition, I think. And the Pokemon Company, the developers really need to go that way with the series, I think. Alright, so we've spoken about the visuals, we've spoken about the wild area. I want to talk about the music and the audio now. So, as if it wasn't baffling enough, I was instantly taken aback with how much expression and life was infused with the character design. So this kind of goes along with the visuals. I was instantly drawn in when I saw how expressive and full of energy Chairman Rose was when I first saw him. But then I was taken right back out of the moment within the same breath. It was very clear to me right away that this series needs some type of voice acting. I think I would have even taken subpar or even terrible voice acting to the lack of what we have here. Typically, I can just move right past something like this with other games, but boy, it didn't leave my mind throughout my entire experience with Pokemon Sword. And to add more salt in the wound, old school audio clips for Pokemon are used amongst other audio cues used throughout. I get why they did this, to tap into the traditional roots of the series, but I would have much rather had those same audio cues done with some modern flair. What makes these things stick out even more is the music in the game. It is fantastic. I'm not gonna lie, my favorite part of the gym leader battles was the music. Hearing that song begin and hearing it evolve as the battle evolved, especially when Dynamaxing would inevitably happen, was exemplary. It was so good. The music throughout this game constantly reminded me of the lack of voice acting in old audio cues. It is just so good. Now, I talked about the wild area and connecting to the internet. So after playing enough of the game solo and feeling like I could venture into the online world of Pokemon without completely looking like an idiot who hadn't played a Pokemon game for about 6 years, but we'll keep that between us, I jumped into the wild area and turned on the internet, and the experience was, well, it was also but. I almost never found other players to play with in raid battles. The stamps weren't explained very well, and once I figured out how to use them, they didn't always seem to refresh. Trading seemed to work okay most of the time, but was, you guessed it, inconsistent. And the communication seemed to essentially hijack the Switch Wi-Fi, which I am not a fan of. So, for example, say I wanted to get out of the game really quickly, head to the eShop to buy something, then jump back into the game. I would have to be kicked off the Pokemon communication, would have to go do my thing, would have to come back into the game, then reconnect with varying degrees of functionality, i.e. those stamps refreshing. So this was made even more frustrating because there is such a massive amount of potential here. I really, truly hope they manage to get the internet functionality and communication sorted out, because it could really be a game changer for Pokemon Sword. But, I mean, honestly, I'm not going to hold my breath. The thing with Pokemon Sword and Shield is that there is so much potential that is just hindered by things that don't make sense. The art style and the designs are fantastic, but the game looks really bad quite often. The music is outstanding, but the other audio and lack of voice acting really do stick out. The internet communication in raid battles can be really fun when they work correctly. It is clear to see that the developers either needed more time with this title, or they were a bit out of their element when making the full jump to an HD console title that can be played on the TV. But at the end of the day, I really liked Pokemon Sword. Like, it is one of my favorite experiences with the Pokemon series. This could be because I haven't truly enjoyed a Pokemon game since Diamond and Pearl. It could be because I'm a very casual Pokemon player. It could be because I just have bad taste. But the tried and true system of catching Pokemon, raising and evolving them, mixed with the various quality of life additions and changes that were made, just really resonated with me. So if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go spend an obscene amount of time trying to catch a shiny. I'm sure that'll go well.